I had you guys reflect on what were some of the hardships. Through the hardships, what did people do? What was a silver lining that you had to reflect on? Any changes or reflections that came about? How did you get through the challenging times or the continuing challenging times? What were they? Dig deep. So if there are people who still want to talk about it, please write it in the comments. But I heard from a lot of people. I kind of reflected on them, wanted you to see a story or a thread that was coming through with the responses, and I will read all of them because I think they were so brilliant. I don't want to change those words. The second one, I did ask, humor can be a great antidote. What was one of the funniest things, ridiculous, outrageous things that you have done, created, which has helped you cope better? So any of those, both those things. The second part, and I do, well, three parts. Somebody reached out to me saying, we want to know how you cope. How are you doing in the lockdown? So I'm going to talk a bit about that. I'm going to keep the responses anonymous, except Narayan has given me permission to read out his and say that he's written it. So I'm going to start talking about somebody who has been through a lot, who's probably continuing to go through a lot of anxiety, but who's there are good days, there are bad days, but who's coping with it very well. She's had panic attacks which get worse through the night, sleepless nights mostly, so much work to do. Thought of it makes me tired, not being able to function as I used to before. I feel so worn out and breathless all the time. I feel claustrophobic inside the house. So what helps? And I want you to honestly reflect and see what thread you can find out in all the responses. Talking to family and friends. Doing one thing at a time and leaving what couldn't be managed. Brilliant. Diaphragmatic breathing, so deep breathing. Meditation. Bringing myself back into the moment. Listening to Gurbani. Watching Govinda movies to laugh a bit or watch some humorous Netflix series. Yeah, tell us about that. That's fun. And then she has a husband who wouldn't let any discussions go serious. So instead of being worked up, they end up accompanying him in a laughing riot. So I like the way that she's reframed that. I love the next one, my everyday gratitude list. So I guess 3 things to be grateful for every day, and they all have to be different. So the downside is that, of course, focus and concentration has been at an all-time low. So is my inability to enjoy anything. Yet I try to do what I have been doing as part of my daily routine, even if it's for just 5 or 10 minutes. So I love that. I love the persistence. Having joined the course, so it helps me to stay connected to the idea of reality we had before the lockdown. On the whole, just waiting to be out to breathe in some fresh air under the open sky. So I like that. Nithi, I'm going to say your name because you have written it publicly, and I loved. There's one thing which she's written which I really, really like. Despite the lockdown, regular life still goes on. Husband has con calls, kids have adapted to Zoom school, and one plods along taking classes on Skype. Add to this the pressure of the absence of house help, so it's been a time of great physical fatigue. So yes, kind of resonates with the first one as well. My younger kid has always loved the great outdoors, so she is really the one most disturbed by the lockdown at home. Devising activities to distract her from wallowing in self-pity takes up most of our time. Basketball on the terrace, making gulab jamuns, giving and getting haircuts, etc. So that's really good. I like the way problem solving and action have been taken. This is what I love. The one thing that has really struck me was a forward I got on WhatsApp. It said, if you don't come out of this lockdown having learned a new skill, made one major change, done something significant, etc., etc., then you don't lack time, you lack discipline. My first reaction to it was dismissal. How dare this forward put such mental pressure on a person to do something? Sometimes even staying put and coping is a challenge. But then when I thought more about it, I decided to get my act together. The 2 things I always delay is physical exercise and sorting out my trunks full and cartons full of stuff. Don't ask how it piled up, but I have heaps of stuff. You call it clutter, I call it memories and lifeblood. In the last 2 weeks, I have been actively devoting 1 hour a day to sorting my stuff. I am taking pictures, shifting things into an online drive, clearing my stuff. It's mostly paper. Useless to everyone except me, but I am determined that this is something I will achieve. Physical exercise, you ask? Getting there, doing 15 minutes every day. I loved that because I know a lot of people are reacting to all of that, saying, how can we do so much when there's so much that we are going through? But I really like, Nidhi, how you, despite all the stressors and challenges, you somehow figured that time and that conviction to do that. So love that one. Of course, Jaskaran, being shielded from stupidity other than mine, obviously. So I like the belief system he has. So of course that's helped him. Narayan said this, which I really was a great self-reflection. I think about this. Why do we look for silver linings? Because we presume the presence of dark clouds. But what if, instead of that, and instead of seeking silver linings, we try to get to what the dark clouds are about in the first place and look to dispel them? So one of the specific things I've practiced during this lockdown is to constantly lower expectations about everything. I did ask him about that later. Much like how we are able to get through with the bare minimum physiological needs, decent internet included, perhaps we can work towards getting through with meeting our bare psychological needs also. And that seems to have a lot to do with keeping low or no expectations from others and from myself. There's less scope for disappointment and sadness that way, and the focus can be on the moment and giving it your all without fear or expectations of the outcomes. So when I asked him what did he lower his expectations on, I have a lot more on my work plate than usual thanks to increased responsibilities at work, but I don't try to have unreasonable expectations from myself that I will catch up with my to-do list every day or that as a result of my having done something, I will see immediate results of what I can do to the best of my ability and keep moving forward and keep pausing to reflect and still myself. I have to be honest, I didn't influence him in writing this, but when I tell people to lower expectations, I somehow get a little bit of resistance around that, saying, but then what's the fun? Of course, you should have expectations from people. But then I loved the way Narayan reflected on that, saying, if you keep low expectations from yourself, you'll actually feel less frustrated and disappointed. In a way, it opens up space to function well. And I liked how he mentioned, keep pausing to come up for air. You're working from a more centered space, which is what I really, really liked. And you're actually more effective and efficient and productive. Two people that have messaged about relationships, which I thought I really, really liked. To be honest, no real hardship, except it's through the plan that we had for our wedding in a limbo. Sorry, I haven't said your name. I don't know if you want me to, but I'll keep it anonymous. Lots was to be set in motion for after March. And of course, the interstate travel ban, which forbid his weekend visits, added to this distress. However, my her fiance, and I kept lines of communication open, made time, lots of it, for each other virtually, and talked through our feelings constantly. Ironic, but this time apart has brought us closer. And I've been saying this to people that while everybody is thinking that relationships are in distress, there's too much stress, there's a lot of anxiety, the more I'm talking to people, and agreed, I may have a small subset, it's not just all doomsday. There are people who are thriving despite the challenges, who are doing a lot of reflection or taking action to work through things. This one was really, really something that touched my heart too. Dear Dr. Divya, here's something from my heart about that silver lining in this time of the lockdown. There's something about such times being in confined spaces. They do make you look inward and take note of yourself, whether it's the habits, behavioral patterns, or anything else. Mentally, whether it's a make or break after this depends on what we choose to do and how we choose to react at instances. These choices will have a bearing on our mental and emotional well-being. This is what I have learned in this lockdown. It's very easy for me to hold on to an irritable thought and keep coming up with my version of how things should be. I have experienced this with my partner. where factors out of control for both of us become the reason for this irritability and suffocating mental space. And somehow I just used to latch onto it, trying to justify my behavior and reaction. This lockdown has made me pause, zoom out, and reflect on my behavior and realize that it's really how I choose to react to a situation that determines the mental and emotional state I would be in and my partner will be in. It's not about right or wrong or winning an argument. This acceptance has also made me comprehend true love. The thought of looking inwards arises from a deeper thought of being better for yourself and for your loved one. So it's true love that makes you reach out to your inner self and also makes you communicate better with your special one. So I hope to conscientiously make this a part of me. So this was beautiful, and I really, really appreciate the responses that came in. But now comes the mental health bit, the everyday mental health bit. Did you realize the thread when I talked about how do you manage stress? It's either action oriented, so what people do to change a situation. It's reflections. How can I think about it differently? How can I question my beliefs so far, which have caused me distress, and make it more workable for me? What do I value most? And then, of course, there are all the self management strategies, whether it's meditation, diaphragmatic breathing, decluttering, setting those new visions and goals, again, is something that people are doing. So, which I liked the relationships bit because, again, when you start reflecting on how you're processing, thinking, responding, it truly makes a difference. Again, coming to how do I cope with stress? Um, Honestly, I do practice what I preach, or I try to. I'm not perfect. I always like setting the intention, the goals, and the pathways, so I know what I want to do and I'll set out my mind to it. So, whether it's better time management or it's how do I structure my day, all of that goes well. I liked what a lot of you did, taking baby steps towards something you've been wanting to do. So like Nidhi, who was working out, started with 15 minutes. I wanted to take up pranayam and I did do that. But what is it that you can start doing which you've avoided doing earlier? I could always fret and say I'm a runner, I miss the outdoors, I miss running. I could just be irritable about it. But I like reframing situations. So all that while when my coaches have been saying you've got to strength train and build your strength to run. That's what I've taken to in this lockdown is what can I do to make it better once the lockdown opens up. So whether it's strength training or it's actually focusing on my breathing or it's recovering from an injury, those are things I'm doing pretty persistent that way. Again, a lot of reflection and reframing, kind of analyzing my own reactions to situations and seeing where can I make it better. Self-care, I do prioritize it, setting boundaries between work and personal life. I love spending time with my family. That's a big one. Thriving relationships, those are great. Dealing with things by taking action. So again, what needs to be done, let me focus on that. Um, I've actually stepped out of my comfort zone quite a bit this time with the lockdown, reaching out. I thought initially I was somewhat very camera shy, but I realized a lot of us are struggling out there. So can I do these FB live videos, which soon became a little bit of a habit. So analyzing my reactions and then of course working through those. But physical exercise, meditations, focusing on sleep, healthy meals, I think I do all of that. So all these things that all of you are doing, I've been kind of doing as well. So it is something that I would want to kind of focus on. I am extremely phobic of lizards. I don't know how many of you are there, but I decided to commit overcoming my fear of lizards. Earlier, I couldn't stay in a room. I couldn't stay in the same space. Now I'm like, there's one. I sleep in this room also. So there is one. There was a lizard earlier, and I said, you know what? let it be. I'm going to overcome my fear. So my one commitment is overcoming the fear of lizards. It's been something I have had forever. I don't know where it came from. Don't ask me that you should know, you're a psychologist. No, I don't know, but I'm extremely fearful. But I am actually building myself. So once the lockdown gets over, I will tell you about, oh, Saurabh, you too. Let's work on this together. Let's do that. Let's overcome the fear. But I'm committed to it. It's character development. The biggest thing people are facing right now is the anticipatory stress around work. Whether we'll have a job, whether we'll get salaries, whether there'll be salary cuts. I want everybody to understand in a way that I will keep reminding that all of us are, including employers, are struggling with that. Rather than anticipating, saying, what if this happens, what if that happens, I'm hoping your friends, employers are sensitive and compassionate to the fact that he's stuck in India. It's not by choice. He came here for a visit. The lockdown happened, couldn't go back. Just saying, okay, what is the best I can do right now to manage the stress that I feel? And so having that belief that whatever comes my way, I will be able to deal with it. I do want to talk about the 3 C's of stress hardy people. What stress hardiness means is we're not avoiding stress, but we are intervening well so that it minimizes the impact of the stress. So those 3 C's that I talk about are commitment, challenge, and control. So commitment is, okay, I'm committed to whatever it is I need to do to be able to ride this out. Whether I lose my job, I don't get a salary, let me start preempting, not from a fear base but from a problem solving base, saying what can I do to manage the situation right now. So that's the commitment. Challenges, I'm seeing it as a challenge and not as a threat. So you're not feeling helpless and hopeless, but you're saying, how do I see this as an opportunity for growth? I know it sounds, you may say, but it's so utopian or idealistic. Honestly, it's not. The situation is there. What matters is how are you responding to it. So look back at those reflections people had made, that these reflections on our attitudes, our behavior is what really is going to be the more important one. So how can I see this as a challenge to overcome and not as a threat which is overwhelming me? And control, what is it that I can control? Remember that 90-10 principle I spoke about earlier. 10% is the control we have over a situation. So whether we have a job or not, whether our salary comes in half or whether it comes at all or not, we don't have control over that for the most part. What can we do to control that stressful situation which is within my behavioral response? So I would want people to start looking at it from a stress hardy point of view, saying, can I see things as a challenge, and what control do I have, and how committed I am to overcome? I'm honestly encouraging people to be emotionally resilient at this point. We can't be just delving in with what if thoughts or the fear or the anxieties or the worries, but that's what I've been talking from day one. What can we do to deal with that situation? Is there anything we can do to actively problem solve? Can I change the way I'm thinking? So rather than being anxious and fearful, can I do something to approach it in a different way? And if I am feeling that anxiety rising, if there's physical exercise or meditation or just calming myself down that helps, do that. But again, I would encourage your friend to say, what is it that I can do to help with the situation? Honestly, the one thing that has helped me is taking one day at a time, not being foolhardy and saying, of course, not living in denial and ignorance, saying, no, of course, things are going to be okay, be positive. That's the worst advice we can give people. Honestly, I do not like the phrase be positive. It doesn't do anything to me. I'd rather be like, what can we do to deal with the situation? Tell me that. So, taking it one day at a time, a lot of times, and I'm tired of hearing this these days, is, oh, the lockdown could extend till May end. There's so much debate and discussion around it. For all you know, I don't know whether that's happening, but why are we fretting and fuming about it, saying, no, this can't happen, I'm missing my food out, I'm missing this? what, it's okay, one day at a time. So whenever somebody says this to me, I'm like, okay, I'm taking it one day at a time. But what is it that your friend do to keep in contact with his employer, with his colleagues? Can he work away from home? Is there stuff that he can continue to show them that he's doing to kind of make sure that they're getting the impression that, he's still there and is doing some work? If not, I honestly hope that they are sensitive and compassionate. But irrespective, that we can't control. Those self-efficacy, what can I do to manage the situation, is where I would have him intervene there. Living alone is actually difficult in these times, but with time I have gotten comfortable with that. The routine has become stable and I have become disciplined with time. I have stopped watching news and it has been 10 days. The restlessness has gone. I'm so glad, Amrit, you mentioned that, because what I've been telling people from day one is you're not realizing what the news is doing to you at a constant, at a subconscious level, with the voices blaring, unnecessary debates. How is it helping? So if it's not, and you're noticing fears arise, or anxieties arise, please cut that down. What I tend to do is check news on a news aggregator morning and evening, let's say whichever one is the most reliable, Google News for that matter. That's what's helped me, and I don't think I'm any different, maybe more calmer than a lot of people who are outside, who are constantly watching the news. And again, the screen time, I've kept away from it in between sessions. Make sure the screen time, so you may notice that urge to keep checking messages. Please stop that from happening. We will keep having these conversations, whatever comes up. I am looking for suggestions in that way, where if there are things you would like me to speak about, I'll be happy to. I am coming up with a video in Hindi for parents and families, so that's something that was requested, so we'll kind of work on that. And till then, stay safe, stay happy, stay calm, and I will see you guys soon. All right, bye.